advice moving forward. Do you have any words of advice on how we can get the current legislators to all row in the same direction?
I'd like to embarrass them. That's what I'd like to do. Embarrass them into it. I mean, I just haven't. I honestly, I don't want to name names, but I went around to 4 or 5 different legislators. I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. I don't consider myself a liberal. I'm a progressive. And I carried legislation for you ladies. I don't know how you feel about it, but in 1965, I was approached by John Rader. John says, Chuck, state of New York just passed legislation giving the women the right to choose. Do you want to try to see if we can't be number 2? And I said, certainly. So he carried in the Senate and I carried in the House. We got it. We were the 2nd state in the union to give women the right to choose. And that was in 65. Okay? I carried that legislation. I caught a lot of hell from some of my friends around town who felt strongly about it, but I felt it was the right thing to do. In 1967, we had the Equal Rights Amendment in front of us during the Johnson era, and I carried that legislation as well. In the book, I think I mentioned that. There's something really funny happened. We were debating it on the floor, and the way the thing was, I don't remember how many, maybe John will remember, but I think like 60% of the states had to approve it in order for it to become law, something like that. Each state had to vote on it. Well, anyway, we had the debate going, and I was the minority leader or the majority leader, whichever way, which party was in charge, and Ted would be the other side, right? So we switched the roles. And I'm carrying the thing. And Ted gets up and makes a speech, and he says, my wife has all the rights she needs. And with that, the wives, which about 20 of them were up in the gallery, came storming out of the gallery to get him to choke him. His wife. The speaker slammed the gavel down and called a recess to the call of the chair. In other words, get the heck out of here. And they took off down the hallway to duck and hide in the legislative lounge. The wives went right in there after them. And they were in there, you call it lobbying. They were in there punching their husbands. When they came back out, Ted Stevens got up on the floor and helped pass it. So I'm pretty proud of that record. I think, I did my thing. And I'm proud of that part of my career. And what I was going to say, where it goes with the present legislature, is this. I talked to these legislators about forcing the previous governor, what the heck is his name? What? Parnell. I said, just drive him against the wall. Make him sign up for that Medicare program. Because it brings money into the state. We got 40,000 people up here not covered with any kind of medical insurance. I said, we could get him signed up. And he won't do it. I said, beat on him. Make him do it. And these 4 legislators, and I won't name them, you can guess who they were, said to me, but why, if we do that, Chuck, you don't understand. We won't be able to get reelected. I said, are you kidding me? That's a reason not to do it? So there's what's wrong with the legislature. They're worried about getting reelected instead of passing legislation. I was pretty thoroughly disgusted with that answer, I'll tell you that for sure.
Hi, Chuck. I wanted to go back to your talk about aviation safety, because I had an experience shooting the documentary out of Tititlic in Prince William Sound, and I flew in Jim's flying service out of Spenard, and so when they came to pick me up, they put probably a relatively young, but probably smart pilot. And so he flew over and he got about halfway across and decided that the weather was too bad and he just didn't feel comfortable and he flew back. So then Jim got into the plane, flew to Tititlic, and he started just really hammering on this pilot because this young pilot had turned around and gone back. And I said, Jim, if he didn't want to fly, I didn't want to fly with him. And I thought, you know what I need to do every time I get into one of these planes, I need to tell the pilot that I want him to fly conservatively, that I don't have to be any place, any particular day, any particular time. Because exactly what you say, and you have lived here long enough to know a lot of people who have died, not only flying planes, but mountain climbing and the rest. So I just wanted to reaffirm. The other thing I wanted to say, Amoeba is going to do Politics of the Past, January 14th. We have a delightful spot of Chuck Sassara, that it was done by Ed Eisenstein, who was a very good filmmaker, and it is done in the style of Charlie Chaplin, black and white silent film. And that's all I'm going to tell you about it. But it's one of our most delightful spots. And he knows what I'm talking about. January 14th, yeah.
Where?
We are going to do it probably at the Aviation Museum, which is kind of fun.
Hey.
So it's, you know.
Let me give you a thought on that.
Yeah.
The first time I ran, I didn't know how to run. I made 2 mistakes right off the
Hal.
bat.
Excuse me, go ahead.
What?
No, nothing. I'm just directing.
You're the
light.
moderator. You're the moderator.
Excuse me.
Let me mention this. I lived at Big Lake, and I decided to move into Anchorage and run for office. You know, get in with a mix. And so, I didn't know how to run. I made a mistake right off the bat. I wrote a white paper, a position paper, and I said, and I paid for the space in the paper to print this. I said, we should build a University of Alaska campus in Anchorage. This is where the kids are. Guess what happened? The next day, Bob Atwood wrote an editorial blasting me. Why? Because Bob Atwood was the president of Board of Regents for Alaska Methodist University. Okay. Then Eugene Short wrote one. We don't need them. They'll come in, they'll swallow us up. Community college will be gone. And then, not to be outdone, Dr. Wood up in Fairbanks said, you don't need to spend money in Anchorage, spend it here in Fairbanks. That was my first idea, build the University of Alaska Anchorage. And I persisted. I said, no, this is where we need, this is where the kids are. Okay? Now, back to that thing that you were mentioning. I didn't know how to run, so what I thought, well, you know, I know a guy in Kodiak who rents old movies, and I'd done some work with him after the quake. Actually, I built him a place out there to process Martin Seafood. Martin Seafood, he was selling crabs. And so I built him a crab processing plant over there right after the quake. Anyway, I asked him to see if he could get me an old movie, because I was going to try to make a commercial using an old Max Sennett kind of movie. Well, I found out I couldn't do it, because they would not allow that to happen. So I got Ed Eisenstein, who had gone to school with my brother in high school. I got Ed Eisenstein and a handheld camera, and we went out and made a movie. Okay? We wrote the script. We shot the thing. We shot the thing at 16 frames a minute. Is that right? Or a second?
That's about right. Because
16 frames a second, I guess it is. Yeah. And we projected it at 24. So everybody's going like this. Then we took a Scott Joplin piano thing, and we got a 33 1/3 record and played it at 45, recorded it. That's what's supposed to be on that, and they somehow got dropped off.
I'm going to see if I can get that.
Yeah, if you get that Scott Joplin, that'll make the thing.
Audio.
Because they dropped it, they lost the audio. It's at the university in the archives over there. Yeah. And it was so funny, you know what happened? I started getting phone calls at home. People were calling up the station and saying, when is that going to be on again? My kids have been sitting in front of the TV all day long waiting for it to be back on. And I got elected.
One of the guys that I am still in contact with Beth and Ed,
Yeah.
and the next trip I go to Seattle, I'm going to connect with them.
They're on my cell phone. When they get on there, I can go over and talk to them on my cell phone.
Hal.
Chuck, 1962 and 64, I was in high school in Juneau, and I heard about the Boar's Den, I didn't know who the cast of characters were that were there, but I did hear that there was a lot of groups and parties that would go there. In January 1963, I got my first paycheck, or first paycheck with an actual written check as opposed to cash money. And the first $15 I made that year was taken out for school tax. What was the political price paid by the legislators that passed the income tax and the school tax back in the first two legislatures?
No, I don't remember.
And
I
what,
remember when we dropped the income tax, which was a big mistake.
how
The
did they
school
get
tax,
the tax
the old
paid?
school tax, we had a law on the books that there were no dedicated taxes.
Mhm.
That was the law that we had on the books. So you couldn't have money. It went into the general. Money was supposed to go into the general fund and then be appropriated out as needed, instead of a dedicated tax.
How was the public convinced to vote for the tax, the income tax, or did it?
No, they got rid of the income tax.
Oh, I'm talking about when they first adopted it.
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry. There is something I can't remember. There's one thing I can't remember. Yes?
Yeah, since the $200 paycheck you got in the legislature was a surprise to you, it makes me wonder what motivated you to take a job for 6 months out of the year that you thought was not paying a cent? What motivated you to actually get into politics to begin
You
with?
know, how would you like to be able to set the clock back to 1776 and be able to sit down around a table with those people? That's what it was like. It was a challenge. I could see it. I knew what we were going to do, what it was going to be like, and I couldn't pass up that opportunity. I'd have paid them to be down there. You don't get that kind of chance. We were creating a state out of this little pile of dust that we got as a territory. So it was a rare opportunity, and I say in the book, I was born at the right. I just looked by chance. I was born at the right time, and this will never happen again.
Just a footnote on the income tax issue, Chuck.
Yeah.
The reason that it was adopted was because the leaders of the state were trying to show that they were responsible enough to be suited for statehood. Because the big argument against statehood was there's no way that Alaska could finance itself any which way. So, okay, resources, but also being responsible meant having a state income tax. So that state income tax was adopted, and a great many of the people who voted for it were defeated in the next election.
So does that mean that we're irresponsible now?
Any other questions?
Yes.
Barbara?
Thank you. It's been so interesting. Many people have said that with the oil company, finding oil up here, and with the oil companies coming up here and bringing people from other parts of the country, that's when Alaska started, instead of progressing, degressing. What do you think about that?
I thought Alaska was a great place before oil. It was a great place to live. I'm not sure what we gained out of the whole thing, really, to tell you the truth. We got a lot of money to spend, but then we spent it, some of it wisely, I guess, some of it foolishly. But people came up with the oil industry, no real difference. And when you get right down to it, the ones that came over here to catch fish in the 1890s were the gold miners in the same period of time. There waves of people come up here. During World War II, a bunch came. Anchorage went from about a few thousand people up to about 25 or 30,000 based on World War II spending. You know, building of Elmendorf and Fort Rich and all the other ancillary things that were built at that time. So we had these people come in waves, different times of our history. And most of them soon converted to being Alaskans. They were out chopping firewood, and like my wife, who grew up in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, used to run around out Big Lake with a 30-06 rifle chasing moose. You know, you talk about someone making a change. You read the dedication in my book. You want me to read the dedication?
Yeah.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It happens to be right here. And I enjoy doing this. Either I've got to get rid of these glasses or get rid of this microphone here. Dedication to Anne, my wife of 58 years, a woman of grace and warmth and wit, who never wavered in her loyalty, no matter which way our trail turned. She was the love of my life. She died in my arms as I held her upright, trying to squeeze one more moment of life into her. Flashbacks raced through my head. And at the wheel of a 40-foot ketch in pitch-black seas. She was looking up, selecting the stars she would navigate by as we passed through the straits. Anne sitting on a log by a fire in the jungle, listening to a young black woman who was explaining how she was facing the future. The woman's 2 young daughters were huddled tightly to Anne, clutching her sleeves. I had stepped back out of the circle of light so they couldn't see the tears welling up in my eyes. Anne holding the door open for any weary traveler.
Bill?
You are an incredible person, and I'm wondering, how would you explain the development of your moral compass? What did your parents, your teachers do right?
Well, at a very young age, I was born, right? People always ask me, when were you born? I said, how would I know? I was too little. So I don't know when I was born. I just have to go on what my mother said, and that's hearsay. But I think there were a number of things that affected me. I came from a family of doers and somewhat risk takers, and my dad and mother. My dad ran away from home when he was 13 years old, not because of any problem at home, but his grandmother was having a difficult time financially because her husband, who was a railroader, was drinking up the paycheck on the way home from work. And my father was an orphan at the time, so he's living with his grandmother. And so at age 13, my dad left Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, went down to the railroad station, hopped a freight and went to New York, climbed off the freight in New York, walked across New York to the city docks, climbed up a hawser, climbed up into a ship and stowed away and went to Bremen, Germany. He got off the thing and he peeled potatoes across the Atlantic. When he got off the boat in Bremen, he went to work on the docks building wooden crates. That's what he used to ship because they didn't have containers in those days. And he lived on the docks there in Bremen for about 6 or 7 months, building crates. 13-year-old kid, blonde, blue-eyed. What's he do? He finds out there's a ship going to South America, so he goes up and climbs up on this thing, stows away. He ends up in Barranquilla, Colombia. Not 14 yet. He works on the docks, building crates. And of course, he's there on the docks. And when he wants something to eat, he goes into the local bar and orders an empanada. You know, and he knew all of the street people that were walking back and forth. A fight started in the bar when he was in there one night. And they were chasing each other with broken bottles and knives. So my dad, who was only, not just turning 14, heard someone say something about get the American kid, so he took off running. He had a shirt and pants and some cheap patent leather shoes on. He ran out of the bar and ran down the street and out into the jungle. And he kept going and going and going and going and going. He had a lot of adventures. I don't want to tell them all. I can't do it now. It's not enough time. But he kept walking and running and walking and running. He went 1,000 miles. He walked from Barranquilla, Colombia, 1,000 miles over the top of the Andes Mountains to Guayaquil, Ecuador, on the opposite side of the continent. Then he stowed away on another ship, went down to Valparaiso, Chile, and he walked from Valparaiso over the top of Bolivia into Argentina. Then he came back over to the coast and he went up to Panama and he applied for a job. He's only 15 years old, and they said, we can't hire you. We don't hire 15-year-old kids at the Panama Canal. So he gets a job in cleaning the bottoms of these coastal steamers, or not steamers, coastal banana boats. These call them banana boats. They're about 80 feet long, and he'd get out and stand in the muck on the beach, scraping the paint off. And his feet started swelling up from the paint chips and the scratches and scrapes he got. So his feet were swelling up, and then another guy said, you better do something about those feet or they're going to be cutting them off. So he said, where do I go? He says, well, go up 3 blocks, go right, get on Calle Ocho, walk down Calle Ocho, 8th Street, till you see a greenhouse with a red door, and ask for Nita. So he goes up and knocks on the door and asks for Nita. So Nita sees him, pulls him in, and starts taking care of his feet. He's laying in the bed there in this place, which turned out to be Nita provided all of the medical help for the ladies of the night, let's put it that way. So they were all coming by and looking at this 15 or 16-year-old kid that laying in bed there. And he was getting more mothering than he needed. But anyway, so finally at age 23, after being in South America and on his own for 10 years, he goes back to Pittsburgh to see his grandmother. First day he's back in Pittsburgh, he's walking down the street and somebody says, hey, Charlie. He looks up, oh, how are you, Angelo? How are you doing? Okay. Where have you been, Charlie? Oh, I've been to South America, been to Germany, been here, just wandering around a little bit. The other guy, Angelo, says to him, well, I know 2 girls. They're cousins. You want to go on a double date? My dad says, yeah. So that night, my dad and Angelo take these 2 girls out. They're first cousins, Anna and Catalina. So my dad took Catalina. They went on a date. 4 days later, Catalina, Kathleen, and my dad went to the Justice of Peace in downtown Pittsburgh and paid $2 to get married. When he filled out the marriage application, Catalina said to my father, whose name is that? She didn't know his last name. She thought his last name was Sims. He wrote down Sassara. He'd been going by his grandmother's name, was Charles Sims, while he was in South America. So she married him not knowing his last name. Only knew him for 4 days. They paid $2 for a marriage license. Now you want to meet a character. You read about my mother in that book. I mean, she was his equal, and then some. And some of you people here actually know her. Gary, I'm sure, remembers her. But when you come from that kind of stock, it's easy to be doing what I'm doing. I'm practically a retired dilettante compared to them.